Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And I want to do something I haven't done before because I'm with such an unusual, I have to say, amazing uh, young person, Verity Oltjenbruns. And I hope I said that right. And for the
You got
rest of
it.
this, interview, you're just going to be Verity. But before, and Verity has military, the title of this interview, just to capture everybody. And by the way, it's March 25th. I don't usually do dates, but it's March 25th. And yesterday I was wearing a sweatshirt when I did an interview, and today I'm wearing a polo because it's spring. But I want to capture people. And of course, Verity and I met on LinkedIn, my favorite place to hang out. And it was just instant, oh, wow. But I want to do something to kind of entice you listeners out there. And so I'm going to do something I never did. Verity had sent me something called a CV, which I didn't know what it was. And now I do. It's kind of like an extended resume. So Verity has military experience in her young life, and she's also in medical school. And this is about 9 pages. So she's right now currently at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. She guess what, everybody? She went to Rutgers. But there's other things to just start these things. She can address it later. But her supplemental education, she was Airman Leadership School, Joint Base, McGuire Dix. Her educational activities and presentations, she was involved in hearing conservation, the 4th Marine Aircraft Wing, and employment experience. She was Base Operation Medical Clinic Team Lead, Base Operation Medical Clinic, 87th Medical Group, Joint Base, McGuire Dix. I'm doing this for a reason. This is just so amazing. She also was a public health journeyman, base operational, blah, blah. Moving along, she's got a whole page here of software experience. I'm not even going to touch it. Personal honors and awards, Dean's List, obviously. She's got a ton of military decorations from the Air Force. By the way, we're not talking about somebody in her 40s or 50s. We're talking about a young person here. What else? Community service. She currently is doing COVID vaccine drive volunteer work in Philly. And the other thing that caught my eye, she's done an African Partnership Flight Ambassador, which means she was one of several ambassadors who worked with African military personnel from 8 different countries. And the other thing that caught my eye is one of her hobbies is boxing, and I think that's great. So I kind of did this to grab readers that we have such an unusual. So Verity, I think as we jump in, if you would take the floor now and do a little bio of yourself, and then we'll go into some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Calvin. First off, it's great to be here talking on your show, We the Species. It was just really interesting learning that you've been doing this for a while during the pandemic, and I guess just capturing and talking to different people and learning about them. That was really one of the most, unique or unusual things about my time at Rutgers. Even though I wasn't there that often, I was usually just coming up as a commuter student at night and would just kind of show up at class for 2 hours, 4 hours, however long class was, and I would just kind of run back down the turnpike and go to sleep so I could wake up the next morning and do it all again. So people didn't really know me, but I know that Rutgers is such a huge collaborative community, and yeah, it's just unusual like how many stories people have got to have. So just a bit about me. I'm a Colorado native. My originally born in the northeastern part of the state. Spent most of my time growing up in like the southwest corner of the state, affectionately known as the Four Corners. Both of my parents grew up, in the farming community in northeastern Colorado. Out after, I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force at 19. I'd been working as a front desk clerk a bit before that, but it was a very rural, isolated area. There wasn't any opportunities. So I basically peaked at 15,
Wow.
getting a job at front desk at a motel. Like that was most I could hope for there. So had to go somewhere. And yeah, so then I joined the Air Force. I didn't really have military members in my family, except for my brother. He is 13 years senior, and he joined the Navy in 99. And I seen that work for him, wanted to get out and make a difference. We'll get more into that later. And then, once I got through my initial training as a public health technician, about 6 months into my time with the Air Force, I got stationed in New Jersey, and then I got established in New Jersey, and then I found myself up at Rutgers and doing that at night and just kind of juggling the two, doing active duty and public health at the clinic in the day, and then going to Rutgers at night. Did that part-time for 5 years, the studying part. And so after that time and a half for 5 years, I got into a post-bac program sponsored by the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences, and called the Enlisted to Medical Degree Preparatory Program, also known as EMDP2. Only about 100 DoD members have done that program to date. It was founded in 2014.
Wow.
And then after I finished that program, they provided me the pathway to wrap up my science requirements for medical school. Then I applied to medical school, and now I'm back in Philadelphia, sort of back in the area again, after a couple of years down at DC. But you can go, we can go into the interview now if you're ready.
Sure. Well, I wanted to go back. Is there anything you left out about what it was like growing up in a small town in Colorado compared to growing up in the most densely, being here in the most densely populated state?
Yes, definitely. It was definitely a huge, well, not exactly a culture shock. I had more of a progressive mindset. I wasn't really from there in terms of, generations being exposed to that environment, and that's all you knew. But just to kind of give you an idea of the area, there are two towns, Natarita and Nukla. They're about 5 miles away from each other. They sort of collaborate since there's nothing else really around. To give you an idea, the total population between the two towns is about 1,100, 1,200 people.
No.
And the nearest McDonald's, I looked it up just, to confirm it for laughs. I usually say about 2 hours, but it's an hour and a half. I would be exaggerating if I said 2 hours.
You had to go an hour and a half to get a McDonald's?
Yes, you'd have to go an hour and a half, 80 miles down the road to Moab, Utah. So if you want to go to one in the state, though, and stay in Colorado, it would actually be more like an hour 45, an hour 50.
Wow. I don't, being here in Jersey, where there's McDonald's on every corner and other fast foods, I can't even process what that would be like. It's so culture shock.
Yeah.
And then leading into, so why the military? Why the Air Force? I don't know if you may have touched on that a little bit. In your intro.
Did just touch on it a little bit. So as I mentioned, normally I wouldn't have thought about the military as an option, not coming from like a military family where everybody did it. It wasn't common. My brother, again, was the only one that did it. So Adam joined the Navy in 99, and he decided to make a career of it. Me being 13 years younger, I saw it I saw that it was a career that worked well for him. So I kind of filed it in the back of my head as an option. And I knew that I wanted to get out, and I knew I wanted to make a difference, but I hadn't quite nailed down what I wanted. And I knew that I wanted to find my passion, and I didn't I didn't quite know what that was, obviously, at the time. I think if a lot of people are honest with themselves, they really don't know exactly what they want at 18 or 19. They might have like sort of a, a target that they want to aim for, but they don't know exactly what that is. And I knew that nobody in my family had went to college, except for actually my brother. But, so still being a first generation student, figuring out the ropes, knowing that I was interested in something scientific, or a health profession. It was just kind of that I knew I needed to pause and figure out exactly what I wanted to do. So I seen joining the military as that opportunity to get out there, to work, to start making a difference, figure out exactly what was a good fit for me. So yeah, back in like Natarita, one of the things I used to volunteer assisting with was a monthly program called River Watch. So we do water conservation and water testing under the Colorado Department of Wildlife, and then we'd send those samples up to the state. So I haven't had a deep interest and a passion for environmental conservation, and again, a bit of an interest in medical, but not really an exposure to it. So, of course, I was a bit drawn to the Air Force, seeing that they have a great like meteorology program, and that was originally the direction I was like thinking. But then I was offered a contract in public health from the Denver military processing station, and I sat down. I took some time looking at the contract, and I thought, okay, this sounds pretty good. I'll give it a shot. And then off I went to San Antonio for boot camp at the end of 2010.
Wow. So we've established that you wound up in New Jersey. So what was it like a typical day in the life of Verity, going to Rutgers and also being in the military? Typical day.
So during that period, when I first started at Rutgers in 2012, I originally enrolled as a environmental science major through SEBS. I was very interested in how that campus had so many opportunities on the environmental side of things. And so generally I started work at, started roll call before work at 7:20, 7:25 a.m. in the morning. And most of the time I lived off base. I didn't usually live like in the dorms or the barracks on base, except for maybe the very, very first year. But that wasn't while I was attending Rutgers. So I would have like a 20 to 30 minute commute into work. And then, of course, you'd have to take time to get ready for your day before that. So usually I wake up at about 6:15. Yeah. And I knew I could probably push it to about 6:25, but I counted the minutes in the mornings. I'm actually not a morning person. So it was kind of funny that joining the military and then even my job before the military as a front desk clerk, they actually both required me to be at work by like 7 to 7:30. So don't ask me why I did that to myself, but so then I'd get in, do roll call. I knew that would start at the very latest 7:25, but sometimes, it'd start a little bit early. So, you had to be there like 7:20, like in your seat, ready to go. And then generally the day would finish by 4:30. It was a clinic, so the hours were relatively set. We didn't have a hospital where there was like a lot of variability. So that actually provided me a good framework that allowed me to then also go to Rutgers at night. And that was one of the appealing things about Rutgers, is because since it is such a huge campus that offers night classes, I seen that there was that opportunity for me to complete my degree at night and go there. So on the days that I did go to class, which we'll say it averaged about 3 days a week. So some terms there was twice a week I'd go in, and then other terms there'd be 4 times a week. And I would do that for 3 terms a year, by the way, because I would do the spring, the summer, or the fall, and I would do a summer term. So usually I'd end up getting about 6 weeks off out of the year where I wasn't on that schedule. And so when I'd get off around 4:30, sometimes, I might be there wrapping something up till like 5. then I would go up the turnpike, and that was about a 45-minute drive. And, you know, of course, you take some time to get some food or to change your clothes. Sometimes I'd, you know, either change like at, you know, base, or sometimes I'd end up Superman changing out at the turnpike somewhere.
You never went to class wearing army fatigues?
I did a few times.
Did you?
I tried to avoid it though. Like, it was just, you know, again, there's like nobody that's military over at Rutgers, and you're like an hour away from base, so you just stick out so much, and you're just like, no, I'm not the security guard. I actually go here. So yeah, and then as much as possible to try to be efficient with my time, I would try to like stack up classes where I would do like usually 2 lectures back to back. So I knew that the very earliest I could make it to a class was the 5:35 section. And you know, if I could, I would like aim for doing like a 6 to like a 7:15, and then I'd aim for like a 7:30 or 7:45 to like a 9.
Mhm.
And then I wrap up those 2 sessions, and then it'd be another, you know, half hour, 45 minutes back down the turnpike. So on the days I did travel, my commute, or for class, my commute was averaging about 2 hours per day
Oof.
with a 9-hour duty day. And then, you know, you'd be at class like 3 or 4 hours. And so, you know, we'll roughly say altogether, I'd get home probably, you know, 10:30. And then, you know, that's not including doing homework. That's not including maintaining fitness for the military. That's not including any other responsibilities that came up, preparing, making sure you just had your clothes and everything straight.
Wow.
So yeah, it was generally, I estimate about a 75-hour week during those 5 years.
Wow.
With outside of like homework and working out. So that kind of summed up that rough schedule roughly.
I can't even process this. It's a wow. It's a wow. So you were also a public health technician, so you might have had some interesting experiences or remembrances from doing public health technician.
Yes. So initially, and the thing about public health, and I know when you mentioned several of my positions, you mentioned like the base operational medical clinic, and you mentioned being a public health journeyman. So basically, we just had different levels of experience, and we would generally rotate through different programs. So we had like a travel medicine clinic type setup. We'd have health risk assessments, which is basically that base operational medical clinic or preventive health type program. We had occupational health, communicable disease, food safety and sanitation. I think that some of the most memorable time I'd spent was actually in my very first position there. So again, you know, 2011, we'll say I'm there, I'm 19. My first job was actually as a health inspector. And also I did like seasonal support for a medical entomology program. So basically medical entomology is just assessing surveillance for pests of medical importance. So in other words, for this area of the country, think mosquitoes and think ticks, like to test for
Yeah, Lyme.
Yep, to test for Lyme's disease. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically with the health inspector side of it, that was a really rewarding experience because I had some great mentors in my corner. I actually didn't really work with many military people at that particular moment. There was a retired civilian employee who had been a first sergeant I worked with, and a Army reservist. And yeah, Mr. Ivans and Natalie Seals, they were just the best to work with. They were both, you know, way more senior than me. And it was just interesting going out there with my backpack and like my thermometer and my clipboard. And I would go into like the food court and I would just want to like poke around and, you know, test the temperature of the coleslaw, you know. And
Is this the food court on base?
yes.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yes.
I've been there. That's quite a food court.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that makes Joint Base, McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, JBL, like kind of interesting is the fact that you notice that Lakehurst is not connected to it. It's like half an hour away. And it's a huge installation. And so like with health inspections, for example, you're doing those routinely and it's just a lot of responsibility, a lot of ground to cover. But then, you have to be effective while you're doing it, and kind of starting to learn that at 19, that I can't just walk into the kitchen and, tell the manager, hey, I need this, that, and the other. That I had to learn to communicate and sort of be able to influence people to be effective and to figure out what actually works for them in the way they manage their daily operation, rather than just walk in there and throw the FDA food code at them and tell them what needed to be done. I know that if I acted like that, I would walk right out and they would just go on and do whatever they were doing. So it was interesting learning that as a two-way street, and then, being able to establish that two-way connection. And I think that the second most rewarding part of being a public health technician was when the preventive health assessments, those risk assessments, were transitioning into BOMC, which is more of a DoD level workflow, basically restructuring it so they can try to sync up the process to be similar among all the service branches. That way, they can all crosstalk and communicate and not worry about what records we're looking in. And because again, we're getting more interoperable. So it's important to be able to crosstalk and look at everything.
Okay.
But it was just really a bit difficult to, initially be the guy that's starting that transition and going over and training family health providers and their teams. And then also being on a team with like 2 or 3 other people and saying, okay, well, because everybody's just learning this process, we're really behind, but we got to kind of, buck up and we got to do it. And so it was difficult, but I think I had some of the most laughs with that crew because we worked hard, we played hard.
Right. I'm going to go off topic a second, and I forewarned you when I was going to do this. And I always like to ask a little cerebral thing in the middle of an interview. So here's the quick question, 1-word answer, and you actually don't have to, but digest it first. Little medical term, digest it first. Verity, living or dead, somebody you'd like to spend the day with, excluding, like family or friends, but there it is.
So I think that living or dead,
Excluding family or friends.
Yes, excluding family or friends. I think that one of the people I would like to, I guess, kind of pick their brain a bit would actually be Dr. Paul Farmer. I was going to talk about him as one of the 2 people I thought about later in the interview, but if you're not familiar with him, he's an infectious disease physician. He graduated out of Harvard, co-founder for Partners in Health, which is a basically like a non-government organization focusing on global health, global equity in health. And I'm really inspired by his dedication to improving global health. It's a bit different than a lot of health organizations that focus on aid, because if you think about it, right, you can have a health organization that goes into a community, throws a bunch of money at the community, right? And they can say, here's, money, here's vaccines. Hopefully they're not throwing syringes, because that would be, a bad like needle stick policy. But, the gist is that once those resources, the physicians, the nurses, the supplies are exhausted and they leave the community that was being aided, essentially is the same as it was before. It's going to, revert back to the condition that it was before. Nothing's really going to change. So what makes Dr. Paul Farmer's organization, Partners in Health, a bit different is that they focus on the idea of accompaniment, which is that the, I guess, organization works with the patients and accompanies them on their journey to health. So it focuses on, okay, not only are we going to ensure that you get your insulin for your type 2 diabetes, but we're also going to ensure that you know how to use it, that maybe you have people you can talk to in your community to help you be well and ensure that you can get to your medical appointments, ensure that you can continue to access your follow-up care. And so then it's just building that infrastructure with community health workers, other facilities, and then leaving that community better than you found it. And I think that focus on helping the neediest people and that focus on capacity building in communities is something that we really need right now. When we think about, the past year with COVID, it's really easy to be impressed that we got a COVID vaccine research developed and that the logistics of it being distributed is already began, within a year of us really realizing that this was an issue. But we can't lose sight that, the equity of that distribution is poorly managed. The fact that, this technology is available is great, but it doesn't mean a whole lot when large swaths of the population can't access it.
Correct. We're learning, and they're trying really hard to kind of level that the inequities of the whole. It's heavy and it's deep. So let's go to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, where you are now. Just throw some different things that you're doing there in pursuit of medicine.
Okay, so to just, I guess, provide some insight to the some of the activities that I'm involved in.
By the way, do you know, to couple, have you gone to any different particular, are you leaning into a particular medical persuasion? Do you have, I mean, listening to you, public health, and I mean, do you have a direction, in addition to your activities, do you have a direction where you're leaning?
Yes. So what I'm really looking into right now is a specialty that has more of a mix between clinical and procedural. I want something that's not necessarily just dealing with patients in the office, but not necessarily completely procedural all the time. But I do still have an interest in surgery. Right now, I'm actually leaning towards looking more into otolaryngology or ENT as a specialty and emergency medicine. I am still interested in taking whatever specialty training I get, though, and applying that to a global health setting later on after graduation, while I'm in the military, and then even after I finish military service. That's an area I really want to go into.
That was a question I was going to ask you, plans after graduation. How many years are you, is the MD-P2 program, is that tied into the fact that you're going to be, once you graduate, you're going to be going into the Air Force again?
Yes. So between my commitment with EMD-P2 and my time there, and also my scholarship with the Armed Forces HPSP program, I will, altogether, it's a 7-year commitment. So 3 for EMD-P2, 4 for HPSP. So I'll return back to the Air Force after I graduate on active duty to pay back those 7 years. But that doesn't include residency training. And, since, we need to complete a residency in the States to be able to use our degree, it'll add another 3 to 5 years. So it's kind of heavy to realize that, but I'll be looking at finishing up my time with the military between 2034 and 2036, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Hey, you know what? It's funny. I kind of look back on things. I grew up in very turbulent times, 60s, and really turbulent times and all kinds of things. And but I do look back, and is there a regret? Ever so often, I do think about uh, military service, and it might have been a really smart thing to do because pension wise and all kinds of reasons wise, you're doing things for your country, and they're also going to take care of you. So I do think about that, and I do have regrets about that time in my life. Maybe I should have done something. And actually, I'm finishing a second novel, and I address some of those issues of serving in my second novel. So that's your plans after graduation. Another great cerebral question to ask: who has inspired you in your life, and why, and whom?
So there are two, and it's no surprise, physicians that outside of family and friends that inspire me. And as I mentioned, the one was Dr. Paul Farmer, and then the other one is Dr. Viktor Frankl. So I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
The guy, Viktor Frankl, is that who you said?
Yes.
He's the guy who wrote about surviving.
Yes, essentially. So he, for those that don't know, he was a Austrian psychiatrist and neurologist, and he's a Holocaust survivor.
Yes,
yes. And he wrote this book that's really amazing. Everyone should read it. It only takes probably about 4 hours to read it. Like, it's actually really concise. But it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And it was, basically a like autobiography of his personal outlook, his personal experience and assessment as a psychiatrist in a concentration camp.
Wow.
Of just the way he's seen humanity, the way he's seen that like internal spiritual fight that we all have, maybe not to that degree, obviously, but still those challenges. And there's just one quote I do want to share that like really stands out. And I think that, if he can say this, I think that we all have to take pause and say, yeah, we can agree with this. If you can say that under those circumstances. So one quote that sticks out is between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is the power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. If you can say that as somebody who's at a concentration camp, the psychiatrist can come to that conclusion. I think it's very important that we always take a hard look at whatever problems we're facing or whatever problems we see in society, and that we take that moment where we're freaking out and we pause, and then we remind ourselves we can control what we're doing.
Heavy. Heavy. I did know of Viktor Frankl, and I knew. So we've kind of covered. Is there anything else? By the way, I have to interject because you are so interesting and fascinating in your journey, and I'll say it, quote, on air, that you are welcome back anytime to discuss whatever. This channel is open. I had said that to a biologist at Rutgers in one of my earlier interviews, and he took me up on that, and a couple of months later he was back. So you are so interesting, and there's the things you want to expound upon, and talk about I'm always here for you. And so is this audience, because it's so interesting. You know, it's like my head is spinning. I'm trying to process, everything, first of all, I cannot process getting up at 6:30 in the morning and going to class at Rutgers that night, wow, and driving. So you are amazing. So is there anything else you would like to, Verity, if you'd like to throw in, or just to kind of wrap things up? Last thoughts for now?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I know that there's still like so much that's left unsaid, but
Yeah,
I think leaving off of that note with Viktor Frankl, like that's honestly, the tone I really want to leave this off on.
that's great. That's great. And it is a great way. And this time with you and our previous time we chatted has been very special to me because you're quite amazing. And I've learned so much from you, and you actually have been transformative for me, because I know what a CV is now, and I've digested your accomplishments, and you really are amazing, and I'm thrilled. And there's always a reason in the universe why people meet. It's kind of a spiritual, energetic thing, and so it's meant to be. And it was meant to be that we met, and we're spending this great time together. So I just want to thank you so much for your energy and your time and your caring and your service, by the way. It's wonderful. And thank you so much. And please do come back.
Thanks for having me, Calvin.
All right. Thanks, Verity. Have a wonderful weekend, and to be continued.